So perhaps we can start again. My name is Hoeren. I am your lecturer in law of the digital economy. I send my best regards to the famous Bali of Vienna, our new mascot. You've seen the nice picture of this wonderful dog. We have organized our final exam. And to mention that we start a testing procedure in the first lecture round in January at the 7th. We have 1 week to check our testing exam. The exam will be organized using Microsoft Forms. So we have checked also that you cannot use this form in ChatGPT. So if you try to let the computer work and do your exam, that will definitely not work. You get perhaps 20 questions, which you are obliged to answer using multiple choice. The Münsteraner students get perhaps similar questions for their exam, so but they have to do it in writing. So in the testing week in January, we'll check that you get acquainted with multiple choice. That means you cannot alter your answers. If you have chosen your answer, you have made a definitive choice, and you cannot alter it. That needs to be checked. The real final exam will be made in February, and you have 1 week to answer all questions. You are not supposed to answer all questions because that is rather complicated. So choose the questions which are easy to answer for you. Are there any questions regarding the final exam? I don't think so. I haven't seen or.
Sorry, I didn't understand the dates, probably. I didn't hear you well enough.
The testing week will be start at the 6th of January. So you have 1 week to test these Microsoft Forms. The real final exam will be in the first week of February.
Thank you very much.
Okay, welcome.
Could you say again how many questions need to be answered? If you say it mustn't be all?
We are not very sure. It depends on your colleagues. If all the colleagues are stupid, you are one who will win. We try to define an average standard in order to say you need to answer 50 questions correctly. That is enough, but we are not sure now. We'll see at the end. So that's all. I have opened my slides. We are in a status to discuss software contracts. The Münster students have told me that is the most boring part of the lectures. So if you think in the same way, please send me an email. We will send you an email asking what is the most boring part, what was the most interesting part of the lectures. Apparently, software contract didn't make it on the good run. But we have to complete it because we started with intellectual property rights in digital products. Then we had a section on marketing law regarding digital products. And then we have the part on e-contracting. And in the section on e-contracting, we discuss how do we close contracts regarding software. So, if you have any questions, do not hesitate to ask them. So, we have started with a standard situation in contract law. There are three standard contracts which you need to know. Software sale, called sometimes software license. So the sale of standardized products like ChatGPT, or take Microsoft products like OpenOffice. Then we have a second solution that is software project contract. Then you are interested in solving all your software problems by using programmers to do the job and create an individual solution for you. Then third standard contract will be software maintenance. And then we have finished the standard situation, and we'll talk at the end a little bit more on special solution like escrow agreement, EULAs, or cloud contracts. So we have seen that this problem with individual software is a problem of complex long-term contracts. So in Germany, in France, Spain, and Italy, we only have a civil code which allows to make a contract for work for a result, a success. The success is clearly defined at the beginning. So you can say, I close a contract, describe the situation, the demands of the customer, and then you as a company has to solve these solutions. That doesn't work for software, for individual software, because the customer, he doesn't know what he wants at the beginning. He has only a vague idea. He wants to have very good solution for accounting, for instance. But what accounting means is it will only become clear during the process of writing a software. We have started in checking the procedure before you close a contract, because you need some consultant which helps you to become clear about your needs. He helps you to understand what you want, which solution can solve your problem, and so on. But the accountant has only a work contract for services. And a service contract is very badly regulated in the civil code. So you don't have a clear liability concept in France, in Germany, or Italy. That's very, very bad. When you start a project, then you need a clear internet compliance, a clear IT compliance. You have to check which part of the company needs new software, and can you exit old software contracts, and so on. So you have to write a whole map. What is your company using as standard software? And then you have a problem with a guy we noticed last week called Rudolf von Ihring, the famous inventor of a construction called culpa in contraendo. When you start in software project and the software house is coming and starting as a project, never say to the software house, yeah, you can start already. The head of the company only needs to sign the contract, but it's only a formality. It's not complicated. You can simply start now. When you see that, you create a situation where somebody is trusting you, and this trust is protected under a construction of liability law. And then you need to have an IT project contract, and it's very complicated to integrate the idea of complex long-term contract in the contract itself. I mentioned last week, you have 4 ways to integrate this idea of a process of defining these changes. First is change request. Then you say, I start with a structure of the contract, and if I need to have changes, these changes are made. But when you say as a customer, I want to make as many changes as possible, the software house is killing you, because these changes cannot be made by the software house or are terribly expensive. So it's very bad to let the customer decide on changes. The other solution is to let the software house decide upon changes. But then you are a very bad guy as a customer, because then the software house can freely decide if and how they will do changes. So you need change requests as a typical instrument of software contracts, but it's not a 100% solution. The second strategy is called Service Level Agreement, SLA. There you say, we only draft a very broad contract, and that's the technical matters decide in annexes. So it's a clear annex structure of saying, if you want to describe testing, performance rates, and availability, you're making a service level. The bad thing with this idea is the problem that the nerds are then deciding about important features of the software contract, and these nerds have no idea about law. So you need to check the whole contract from a legal point. Third strategy of solving the issue is agile management. That is really working. That means that you only have a very broad description what the software is about, and all the details are only clarified by the software house. The software house is saying every Monday we have a meeting internally with all the nerds who are doing programming, and they are deciding for a week what they want to do. And then at the end of the week, you're saying, let us have a second meeting. There we meet each other, and then we are discussing what has happened, what was working, what is ready as a program.
Guten Morgen.
Morgen. So,
Was? Haben wir dich vom Zahnarzt abgehalten? Es tut uns leid. Oh, dann ist es noch schlimmer. Ich überlege jetzt, welchen Kunden ich raten könnte, ohne zu unhöflich zu werden.
now,
There's an open mic.
so that is agile management, and that is really successful. All the projects I know of in agile are successful project, but again, the customer doesn't know what he's paying for. The software house is free to decide on each Monday what they will do and what they will not be able to do. So you're paying and paying and paying and paying as a customer without knowing about acceptance, about strategies, how to manage the project. But it's working. We will see now today how agile management can be combined with a contract for success and with payment structures. And the last strategy is building law. That means you are using strategies for big companies constructing a big factory in Iran, and using that contract models for software contracts. Let me especially describe agile programming. That is based on the manifesto of 2001. That was the year when they invented this strategy. You are doing no planning, no specification. It's very surprising for the customer. He doesn't need anything like as a description what the software is about. It is not no planning, no specification, only basic statements on purpose and area of the application. The main problem is described in short terms DVWB. The problem is it a contract for services or is it a contract for a certain success? Can you define agile in a manner that you are combining it with a contract made for specific success. If it's only a contract made for services, of course, the software house is very happy. They're saying no liability. We have a very open system. So we are fans of having service agreement. We call it service agreement. But the problem with the service contract is a very special regulation in Europe for lending employees to other people. We call it Arbeitnehmerüberlassungsgesetz. And that's also known in France and in Italy. If you are giving your employees to a customer, you are punished. The state doesn't want you to give your employees away to the customer. So you have to avoid that the nerd is not working for the software house, but he's working under the direction of the customer. That means to close a contract for services and to combine it with a system of management under the supervision of the customer is prohibited. So when you take the nerds are employees of the software house, and any attempt to have control rights of the customer is forbidden. So that is Agile. Do you know how the other strategies are called? We have Agile. Have you ever heard about other models where the customer is controlling the whole process of programming? It's called waterfall. Because in the waterfall project, you are describing everything which needs to be done on the top, and then it's going down to the software house, and they have to do it. So Agile is a contrast to waterfall model. So that's very good. So now we're talking about the real project contract. I hope you remember my favorite slide. It's called preamble. Then you have to define main new obligations. Then you have to define secondary obligations, and then a warranty and liability, then term and cancellation, and then miscellaneous. 6 parts are the parts of every contract. It doesn't matter whether you have a marriage contract, a hosting contract, or a software contract. So I've told you in the preamble, you have to define legal nature. What is the legal nature of a programming contract? Is it a contract for work, or is it a contract for work and labor, or is it a service contract? That is the main issue. So a software house will always be interested in a service contract, because then they have almost no liability. A customer, he wants to have a contract for work, for service success. And that depends on the preamble. When you see my little nice book on IT contracts, which I published on the internet for free, you see a lot of model contracts, and there in the section 1, the preamble, you find the parties have agreed upon a contract for work for such and such success. That is very important. Of course, the software house is only interested in service contract. So when you have a contract made for work for a certain success, you need to define the performance. What should the software house be obliged to do? And the customer has to pay money. So what are the main obligations of a software house, of a software programmer? You have to give certain things to the customer. He has to give certain rights to the customer. And at the end, there's a certain success. And the success normally is defined in the service level agreement. So we need an annex. What kind of things does a software programmer has to give to the customer? He has to give software to the customer. Never write anything in contracts about software, because software doesn't exist as such. It's the object code. What is the object code? Object code is the language this machine can understand. Machine can only say, put electricity on and put off, and put on and off, and put on and off. That is called machine code or object code. That is what a machine can understand, and you need to have it in order to keep the software running. Is the programmer obliged to give away the source code? What is the source code? Source code is, for instance, a sentence like go to 40. That's the way you are writing as a programmer, as a nerd. So you use a certain language, for instance, called BASIC. That's BASIC for stupid people. And that is converted into that code for the machine to understand. What is the term for converting a source code into machine code? That's a technical word. Compile. You need to have a compiler. He is converting source code into machine code. And the problem, as an unsolvable problem, is that in the software project agreement, you only get this machine code. We have seen in this lecture on trade secret, as most important trade secret in the digital world is source code. So the source code is never given away as a secret. But if you don't have source code, you are unable as a customer to transform, change the software. So this is the beginning of a marriage between programmers and customers. And it's even worse than a marriage, because that cannot be divorced. You cannot say, please go away, because if the programmer is leaving you, he still has the source code and he has the power. So that is very, very dangerous. So can you say, I want to have the source code? Of course, you can say, I'm so powerful, I'm Deutsche Bank, I want to have the source code. But if you are not Deutsche Bank, then you have a problem, because there is no general obligation to disclose source code. In Germany, we have the recent decision of the Court of Appeal of Karlsruhe. Karlsruhe has said there's an underwritten obligation to disclose source code if the contract is terminated prematurely. This is a hope symbol, because if the contract is finished before time, the programmer is going away, you have paid for thousands of euros, and you only have source code, object code, you cannot do anything. So this gives an unwritten obligation to disclose source code. That is funny here. I had one case where I decided as a judge, as a Court of Appeal of Düsseldorf, that the programmer has to give away object code and source code. Very happy case. But at the end, the customer was very, very dissatisfied, because he had a huge pile of object code and a huge pile of source code, but he doesn't have the compilers, the translating program. And without a translating program, he has two parts and cannot bring these two parts together.
And also I heard that the source code is very different from developer to developer. So developers can't understand the source code of another developer. And then when a company hired an IT house and they switch IT house, it's very hard for the second IT house
Exactly.
to understand the visions of the first one, because they all have a different dialect.
Yeah. Perfectly right. Perfectly right. It's very difficult to read simple source code, because it's only a huge pile of lines. And in order to understand the structure, it takes a lot of time. Therefore, you need the compilers. In my case, the customer running after me, I was leaving in the court, and he said, "Stop, Judge, you have to mention the compilers. I need the compiler in order to understand the source code." I said, "You haven't asked for it. No, that's too late. The decision is already made." And he was rushing after me in the men's toilet of Königspassage and said, "Please, please, only a little change of your decision. Please write the compilers." And that is very important for you as a customer. In Germany, in France, Italy, and in Spain, I know one decision. They said you have a fundamental right as a customer to get a written documentation of the functional and operating rules of the software. One day you will meet Sheldon. Yeah, and so Sheldon is this pale man, not washing his hair, drinking mate, tea. They are interested in everything which has to do with informatics and programming, but they hate documentation. They never write documentation, but that's an unwritten primary obligation to do that after the production of the software. That means after completion of every section of the software, you can say, I now want to have a written documentation. Second part of the contract, we have now defined the things which are part of the contract, and you need as well rights in things. And perhaps you remember this lovely person, Thomas Hoeren, who explained to you when we started about copyright law. In copyright law, in Germany as well as in other parts of Europe, we have a separate software protection, then a separate database protection, and then we have general copyright law. All things need to be mentioned in the contract. I want to have the software rights, the database rights, and the general copyright. You have to mention as well trademark law and patent law, because partly software is protected, for instance, by patent law. That has to be defined in the contract. So what you then write is rights buyout. What is a rights buyout? You simply say, I want to get the exclusive transferable right in the software. That's all. It's not complicated to write a software agreement. Simply write an exclusive transferable, and that's all. Exclusive, transferable, exclusive, transferable, exclusive, transferable, exclusive, transferable, exclusive, transferable. This is so easy to understand and to memorize. Or simply use a word, it's called rights buyout, when you say that. And the court, for instance, in Germany as well as in England, has said, that's possible. Write it down, that's all. So you have one problem which I need to explain, this problem of co-authorship. Because if you're using a software house with 10 shelves, of 10 nerds sitting there and being proud of their own invention and software, you have to ask every person of the whole group if they agree to the contract. So every programmer in a certain software is a co-author according to German, Italian, and French law. So you need permission of all these persons for the contract. So I have to send a colleague. Okay, it's finished. Fine.
That's the right solution. So I'm gonna take my life.
Okay, I need to find persons who stop. So you combine a rights buyout clause with a clause on the things which you want to get, object code and source code, and you're describing a certain success. And that is the purpose of a contract. In the contract, you need to define in the preamble the purpose of a contract. What is your project about? and you are defining the clear elements of success in the SLR, in the service level agreement. They are saying, I want to get this and this software for that and that purpose, programmed under quick basic, so, and that is all mentioned in the SLR. So here you see a slide on the way the service level agreement influences the description of main duties. It's a breach of contract if you are violating SLAs. And there you are defining, for instance, availability rates, monthly or quarterly. And then you have again the problem of changes. As I said, you need to combine each software contract with a change request procedure. That means both parties can submit change requests, can ask for changes. If you let the customer freely decide upon the relevant changes, that is very bad and very unclear. So, and the other problem is remuneration and acceptance. In every European country, we have a regulation that's saying that you only have to pay the remuneration if you have a certain sign of acceptance. The customer has to declare, yes, I'm fully satisfied by your software, and in that moment, he has to pay. So, what does acceptance really mean? That is the definition below: a complete and proper delivery and installation and training and the possibility of testing the software. So it's not enough to say simply, I'm okay with the software. You have to follow a whole procedure of delivery, installation, training, and testing. And only after that procedure has realized, then you can say, I'm satisfied as a customer with the software. So the question, the problem is teachers. Do you know teachers? Are you a son or daughter of teachers? No teacher in the family. Teachers are very known in Germany for complaining to the utmost. They are complaining about all. So they simply say, you have made a software, you have delivered it, it was installed, and I was trained, but I don't say I'm satisfied. So they are refusing acceptance, and so they don't have to pay, because payment depends on acceptance. That's a clear problem. So, can you have a system of fictitious acceptance, simply saying, in the moment where you have got the software, we are thinking that you have acceptance. So acceptance is done within a reasonable period of time. So there's a clause saying after 4 weeks of use of the software, we declare that you have accepted our software, and then you have to pay. But That's not allowed in continental Europe. It's allowed in the UK. It's not allowed in standard terms. You can just say fictitious acceptance. So another strategy is implied acceptance, konkludente Abnahme. That means you can say you haven't said it clearly, but you have acted in a way which we believe is acceptance. For instance, if somebody is really using a software in a real-time world, he cannot say, I don't accept it. He is using a software. So that is a clear implied acceptance. Or unconditional payment of the remuneration is believed by the district court in Nanterre and in Milano to be acceptance. So you don't know my wife. My wife is a Protestant lady. She studied Protestant theology, and Protestant people studying Protestant theology always have a belief that every bill which is entering the house has to be paid. So my wife is always paying. I ask her, why are you paying? We don't have the product. Yeah, it's a bill. It's a bill. We have to pay the bill. So unconditional payment can be made, for instance, by my wife. She doesn't declare acceptance by paying. It's a Protestant religious belief to pay. So we have one nice solution in Germany, only in Germany, I believe. What is happening if you are talking and you're making a protocol afterwards and saying, I really enjoyed our discussion on the question whether the software has been accepted. And you said the software is great, it's great working, and that's it. This protocol has never anything to do with reality. You haven't talked about acceptance. And we have talked about Christmas market. Is it allowed to write wrong protocols? And in Germany, we say Schweigen im kaufmännischen Verkehr. So you can use protocols in order to say mistakes and wrong statements. So that is a clear strategy which has sometimes been used. Third element, fictitious acceptance is not possible in Germany. And then we have implied acceptance that's possible. And then we have the question of partial acceptance. That's an invention of courts in Poland and France and Italy. They said, what is happening if you're dividing a software project in parts? So you organize software development in certain parts. Can you have a system of partial acceptance? Yes, that's what the court believed. They said, if you have independently accessible parts of the overall services, you can organize a system of acceptance on the basis of partial acceptance. That's very helpful if you take Agile programming. Because in Agile, you may remember every Monday, the programming team is meeting and discussing the further success of the project. So then you say every Monday we make a system of partial acceptance, and that's all. So you can combine Agile programming with work made for success. So you made it. That's the second big contract we have. That's all I want to explain it to you. Let us quickly go to software maintenance. That's software maintenance is a colorful of possible duties. That might be the checking software by service people. It might be a hotline. It might be an update or an upgrade. So a lot of duties are part of software maintenance agreements. So the legal nature is totally unclear. What is a software maintenance contract from a legal point? Is it a contract sui generis? That's if you don't understand anything at all, you say contract sui generis. The Federal Administrative Court had once decided it's an insurance contract. The solution can only be found using the Bible. For my main duty, I've studied Catholic theology, therefore I'm a fan of the Bible, and you know the Bible. So what is mentioned in Exodus 3:40? Are you coming from Wuppertal?
From Bavaria.
And you? Nobody has any idea of the Bible. Because in the Bible, Exodus 3:14, there's Genesis, there's Moses, he's standing in front of a bush, and there's a voice of God coming from the bush and said, I will be there as I will be there. I will be waiting for you. I'm simply your helper and your support. And that helps a lot to understand software maintenance, because you have a framework of maintenance. That is, I'm your great helper. If you need help, ask me. There's a service contract, so that's all governed by service contract rules. And the individual services based on that, might be a purchase, that might be service, if you're a hotline, or if you're sending around a technician, a repair contract is contract for work. So that's all for that. Now we're coming to the special types. So we have these three main types of contract we have just discussed. Special types are escrow agreement, deposit agreement, EULAs, open source, and cloud. Escrow is a very nice idea. It's very fashionable, especially regarding AI. If somebody, take a picture. Here you visit the customer. Here you have the software house. If the software house is going to the software developer and asking for source code, of course, you get a clear no. But he needs, of course, the source code in order to work with the software. He might then go to a strange person called TTP, third trusted party, to a third person. And there he is depositing the source code. And in the case, for instance, of insolvency of the software house, he can go to the TTP and ask, please give me the source code. That's very, very fashionable, especially in the AI world. So then you only need to know who is willing to act as a kind of third trusted party. Perhaps one day a notary discovered that he can be used, so you can go to a notary and leave the source code there and say, in the case of insolvency, please hand over the source code to the customer. The notary is a very, very bad solution because you can deposit a stone at a notary. He is always willing to deposit anything. So he is not able to check whether the source code is a source code. As the US said, source code is a big pile of paper which nobody can understand. Is it complete? Is it up to date? Nobody knows. Then you have to ask a professional inspection center. There is, for instance, the TÜV in Germany. There is, for instance, Escrow Europe in London. They are offering these services. They are really checking the source code whether it's okay, but that creates costs. And who is paying for the costs? That's a clear problem. And next problem, insolvency. It should, of course, be cut away from all the problems of insolvency law. For instance, it must be completely removed from the ownership of the software house. That means the software house doesn't get the source code back at any time. So there's no right to ask, please give me the source code as part of the software house. And we have a problem with insolvency cancellation, insolvency right. If you're giving away valuable good under insolvency law, the insolvency administrator can say it's not allowed to give away valuable goods for free. So it's only can only be done in connection with the payment obligations of the main contract. You can say, I am paying you €1 million, and for that price, I want you to deposit your source code at a TTP. It's impossible to make that deposit agreement after the main contract has been closed, because that is giving away insolvency goods for free. So next topic, EULAs. End user license agreement. Let me use again a picture for that. That is a solution where the big producer of software has one customer, and now in the internet world, he has a chance to have a direct contact with the customer. In the non-internet world, he needs traders. But here, a direct connection, a big chance for a software house to get into contact with the consumer, with the customer. And that's done by EULAs. End user license agreement. Simply, you want to get software, you get the software, but then you see a window on the internet saying, here are my standard terms, do you agree it or not? Yes or no. If you click in yes, you get it. And in the past, we had a terrible model in Germany, at least, the 4-window model. We had 4 windows opening. The first window was a window with a description of the object. You have just shown interest in that and that software. Do you really want to get it? Then you say yes. So when you say yes, a second window opens with the standard terms. There you see a lot of fascinating, so very often invalid constructions of Microsoft and others. And you ask, do you agree on that? And then you have to type in yes. Then a third window is opening. That is data protection. There you see, you want to store your data for that and that purposes. Then you have to say yes. And you notice already, click, 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 that's horrible. And the fourth window is called summary. You have just ordered that with these terms, with that data protection statement. Do you really want to get it? And then you have to click for the first time, yes, and then you have managed to do it. It was terrible, terrible, terrible. And so within 2 years' time, the Federal Supreme Court in Germany said, that's bullshit. So they have reduced the form of windows to 2. So this first they said the data protection statement is irrelevant because you can use all data, personal data, according to Article 6 GDPR, which you need to close the agreement and to perform your the obligations according to Article 6. So you don't need permission and consent. So a separate window for terms is also not necessary. You simply type the terms in the objects section. You say, I want to sell this software with that terms, and then you click in the terms, so you can see the terms, and that's all. So 2 windows are there, remain. Amazon has started to think about 1 window, but they have lost the case it's not possible to use one window. If you see a solution for that,
What about, sorry, there's one-click buys you can do on Amazon? Isn't
it's
it
forbidden.
forbidden?
Yeah, they tried it in the case of dash buttons. Then there was a button where you can use a button on a machine of a washing machine, and simply press a dash button, and then Amazon is sending you a sufficient amount of dash washing powder. And there, the Federal Supreme Court said there's only one button, and there's a second button missing. It's a chance to correct your order.
So if you like use this one-click buy on Amazon, it's actually 2 clicks, but
It's actually true.
are integrated in the summaries.
Yeah, exactly.
I see. Okay.
So this is all I think for oilers. Now we come to the point open source software. Do you know any product very famous in the area of open source?
Isn't it LibreOffice, for example?
I don't know the product.
It's like something similar to Word and Excel. Open source.
Very lovely. But it's good, huh? You know what? What is the most famous product in the open source world?
Is it Linux?
Yeah, very good, very good. It's Linux. Linux is really known. It's developed from a Norwegian colleague who started it, and up to now there are thousands of programmers who are cooperating with Linus Torvalds. To mention that open source is not freeware. So it's not free. We'll see within 5 minutes. It's the most regulated software I know of. So it's not free. It's given away for free, but under certain conditions. And these conditions are known. There are several license families, like the most famous GPL, General Public Licenses. Then there's the BSD. Mozilla has invented a new license model. There are other open source license models. So it's a very colorful world. And the general public license is the main document to understand open source. We have two different models of the GPL, GPL2 and GPL3. GPL3 is even more restrictive than GPL2. So there's one model in the GPL which is fascinating, the copyleft model. It says you are allowed to use open source models, software, under the condition that is interpreted by continental European judges to be a condition under civil law. That means if you are not realizing the conditions, if you don't obey to the GPL, you are losing automatically all your use rights. Therefore, it's a monster construction. So if you are violating one condition under the GPL, you're losing everything. So Let me go to that. In Germany and in Austria and Switzerland, we have 5 waves of this GPL world in front of courts. The first wave was the wave, as the court said, wow, the GPL said, you have to mention open source as open source. You have to say, when you are using open source, I am using open source. You clearly have to say that in your product, there is open source involved. So that was very clear then for most companies that they have to change their policies and make a stamp on their product. In this product, you can find some elements of open source software. Then the second wave was a wave where you have to print all your documents, all the license documents, and give it to the final customer. For instance, if you're buying a Miele washing machine, you get a 600 pages book, not with nice pictures, but with all the license documents of the software involved in the Miele washing machine. So the third wave, the court said, it was called open source. So when you are modifying, changing open source product, you have to open the source for everyone. It's a contradiction to everything a company believes, but when you are altering a software under open source, you have to open the source to the public. And we are now in the phase, in the period where we have the fourth wave, infection. Because there's no clear borderline between proprietary software and open source. And there might exist a situation where your proprietary software is infected by open source. Let me use one example. If you are developing a new software for a washing machine and you use Linux, the Linux software can be found in all parts of the washing machine. Because the programming language Linux is like a terrible disease. It can be found in a lot of parts of the source code. That is the reason why big automobile companies are for prohibiting the use of open source software so that they are able to say this software is still our property. That's what I would recommend for you in practice. Let the nerds talk about the software they are using. Never allow open source to enter your company's building without your knowledge, so that you know where the open source is in your product. There's one nice final wave, the fifth wave. And our decisions where the court said, who are you? For instance, in Cologne, in the old Court of Appeal of Cologne, a programmer came to Samsung and said, in your TV, there is Linux integrated. I'm a developer of this big group of developers of Linux, and I want to sue you. You have to abolish all Linux parts from your TV stations. So the court said, who are you? You're part of a big family of 1,000, 5,000 programmers. What have you made? In which part of Linux can we find your specific creation? And if you cannot prove that you have made a part of the Linux, which you can find in Samsung devices, you lose the battle. And 0, 0 equals 0. How much damage do you have to pay if you're violating the GPL? GPL said, we don't want to get money, we're not interested in money. So if you are saying we don't want to get money for it, the damage can be nothing, none, 0. So that's very helpful and relaxing. Final part. Now we come to the final part. Cloud. In the past, it was called not cloud, it was called ASP, Application Service Providing. In the very old times, we called it Rechenzentrumsvertrag. So the idea is quite old. You are not interested in letting someone develop your software. You're not interested in buying software. You simply say, you want to use your infrastructure via intranet, on the internet, and we get access to your computers, central computers, and there we are doing what we want to do. So we don't need to pay developers, we don't need to pay licenses, we just use your computers and software. First problem, you need to solve some questions before cloud introduction. So should the program be installed on the computer on premise or on remote devices? That should be clearly answered in order to understand. Which systems are cloud compatible and can be migrated to a cloud provider? Which cloud is better, a German or a US provider? You will see that the big cloud providers, unfortunately, Apple, Amazon, Microsoft, that's called Azure, and Google. These are big companies which all have their seat in the US and are so powerful that you don't have a clear right to ask for separate contracts under German law. Which departments are affected by the introduction? Within the company, for instance, IT, human resources, the finance department, and so on. Can the employees work with multiple clouds? It's very, very complicated. And the aim is, of course, to save money. It's cheaper than to buy software or to let individual software be programmed. But you should know once the cloud has been introduced, it is impossible to return to the older state. once cloud, always a cloud. So it makes sense to start with a pilot project to gain knowledge how a cloud works. This is a nice picture. You can ask for access via a notebook or server or phone. So the cloud provider is in the middle and offers you the access to certain clouds. He offers you, for instance, access to his software, or even bigger, to his platform. That means his computers and the software, or even much more bigger, to a whole computer infrastructure as a service. Let us use the structure which I explained in the beginning. Preamble, main duties, secondary duties, liability, cancellation, and miscellaneous. The preamble, they need to define the purpose of the agreement and say what the cloud is about, and of course, the legal nature. But the big GAFAs, Google, Amazon, Facebook, and Apple, they are always talking about service agreement. And that leads to the problem in continental Europe. We don't have clear liability rules in all contracts of service. Germany is even proud to say we are leading nation #1 in Europe. And we say we have already a case of the Federal Supreme Court from 2007 on cloud and ASP. And there the court said it's rental. It's very easy. It's not a service, it's a rental. That changes everything, but you can definitely say GAFA, the big GAFAs, Google, Apple, Facebook, and Amazon, they say we are not interested in this very strange Federal Supreme Court of Germany. So forget about it. So when we say the German court is right, then there are some primary obligations. The cloud provider is obliged to ensure the operation of the cloud for the entire term of the contract. The cloud user, in return, has to pay the agreed rent. And the customer, the tenant, then is under certain obligations to respect copyright. Perhaps you remember this crazy professor who has told you about limitations in software contracts, the limitation of use rights. And there you have learned that most restrictions of the freedom of property are violating unfair contract terms regulation. Here in the rental law, in cloud situation, most obligations are valid. That's the most interesting part. The big companies can restrict use to the utmost. They can say CPU clauses. They can prohibit you to pass the software to third person. They can have inspection rights. So that's one of the big advantages of this construction. You remember we have talking about the used soft case of the ECJ. The ECJ has said if a software contract is a sale, then we apply the principle of first sale doctrine. That means the resale of software is free. And I said, Microsoft has invented a new strategy, Office 365, because that allows you to do as many restrictions as possible. But the disadvantage for the big companies is if it's a rental, they are liable under rental right. And liability is regarded regardless of faults. You're part of a guarantee. You have to guarantee that the software doesn't have any defect at all. So we even have more problems.
And
Yeah.
liability is ruled under the performance disruptions, right? So we're currently at the performance disruption.
A little bit louder.
Liability is ruled under performance disruptions, so we're currently at the contract at performance disruptions, or?
Yeah, it's a performance disruption. And so we apply the principles of liability of rental. So now to talk about I haven't found the slides. The problem, of course, remains that all these big cloud providers like Apple and Google have their seat in the United States. So we have a problem in data protection because we believe that the United States doesn't have any adequate data protection standard comparable to the EU. So that can only be closed by having a special agreement with Apple and Google on data protection. But then you have the problem of e-discovery and the Patriot regulations. E-discovery means if a cloud provider has the possession of this data, any American advocate can ask in court proceeding to open the files. That's very bad. Imagine Volkswagen would use an American cloud provider. A company is suing against Volkswagen for diesel problems, and he can ask in front of a civil court to open all the files of Volkswagen. Very bad, but it's still a problem today. And the last problem is Trump. Trump is always a problem. But Trump is a nightmare for cloud providing from the European side, because Trump is using national security and will say, I want to know what European companies are storing in their cloud system. And he can do that under American law. And you cannot stop him. He has already done it in his first time as American president. He will definitely do it in his second time. So you are very, very patient and very, very nice. And that means for me now, I will also do this. Thank you, because here you have this last slide of software contracts. You made it. She was one of the persons who complained about the boringness of software contract. Next week, we'll talk as a beginning on data protection, and we'll finish data protection in January. We are almost at the end, so I hope you will be you still like the lecture. I can tell you that the next term we have incredible speakers, guest speakers, when we have LDE2. So the summer term will be a wonderful time for those who have managed the exam. So thank you all very much.
Thank you, sir.
Yeah, to our mascot.
Will there be a Q&A session anytime soon again?
What?
Will there be a Q&A session anytime soon again?
Can you speak louder?
Will there be a Q&A session anytime soon again?
I don't know when. It was foreseen in the program. We have mentioned a date for the next Q&A session, and definitely we will do it. So,
Thank you.
bye-bye. Have a nice week.